Okay, so I'm finally home. It's Friday night. My wife's busy with the kids doing something right now, so I am going to try and get a head start on making the reed. And so this is actually the piece of steel that I'm going to try and do this from. I think this was actually from my old microwave in the kitchen, and when I took it out, I started playing with it. I knew at some point I had to make an instrument out of this. So I think it's probably the right springiness, thickness, maybe, to hopefully become a reed, because I'm too impatient to try and source the metal. And I've already spent all my time on the road trying to file this down as best I can. I've got the reed channel kind of preliminarily, if that's even a word, filed out, ready to go. I've put a taper back onto the frame. I put it in a vise in my van there, and I was able to kind of put it back. So the next step is now I'm going to measure it and figure out the angles that I need for my reed, and we'll go from there. I don't have a fancy caliper. I have one with a vernier scale on it. It's actually probably far more accurate and expensive than the dial or digital ones that you can get at a regular hardware store. But nobody knows how to read it, so nobody borrows it. All right, so what I'm going to do is put a couple of marks at a couple of spots along the frame here. So we'll just choose maybe this spot right here and this spot right here, and take our measurements. Come on. All right. So I am looking at 204 thousandths of an inch for the first part. And I'm just going to break that down real quick. So 204 thou. And then at my second spot here, actually what I should have done is actually measure along. So we'll call it, oh, that was almost 1 inch by eye. Actually, that's 1 inch. Wow, perfect. So after 1 inch, we are looking at, this is actually a little hard to see. The fortunate thing is I'm going to be doing a bunch of filing after, so doubt I need to be accurate to the thousandth of an inch. So we are looking at 150. I'm going to say that's 160. So I have my garage light on an automatic sensor. When I have the garage door open, it's usually not an issue, but if I sit too still, it turns off. So anyway, so I have this kind of taper over 1 inch, 204 thou between the two frame arms, and 160 thou down here. So I am going to essentially map out on this, probably along the side, so I only have to cut one edge, because the videos that I've seen this done on, which is really just one, but anyway, he's got a nice shear in his home shop, which is great. I don't have that. I just have a bunch of hand tools, and I am going to be patient and do what I can. I might be able to set up my Dremel. I've got like a table attachment to grind down the tapered edge or the chamfered edge or on the reed, put that nice edge on it that Again, I don't really know the physics too much about these yet, but I assume it all has something to do with resonating with the straight edge on these. But anyway, so that's my plan. I am going to lay it out. I am probably going to have to hand cut it with a little Dremel saw blade and see what I can do shaping it with my Dremel grinder and sander attachments. So wish me luck. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so back to laying out the taper. On the reed, I was told, or what I've learned is that you should give yourself about 3 centimeters in order to have enough room for the trigger. Now, even though who I was watching, Jamie Bebb from the Harpery, he's American, but he works in metric, and unfortunately all my tools that I have are imperial, and being Canadian, I'm well versed in both. So I am going to lay out an extra length from the edge of 3 centimeters for my trigger. In fact, I'm going to give it a little bit more. I'm going to go, why don't I go 35 millimeters, because I've never actually done this before. And I want to have a little bit of breather space for what I need. Oh, stupid. And just mark that off. Okay, so that is our trigger distance, and I know you need to go out a little bit over the edge of the frame, so I'm going to say half a centimeter for that. So that puts this mark at 286, 287, 287. I am going to need to convert to millimeters, which I don't remember how many there are, and I need my phone, so sorry. Okay, so it's just over 7 millimeters. So from this mark here, which is the bend in my trigger, I am going to go 7 millimeters past, which is now the start of my taper measurement. And the great thing about that is I get to now change back into imperial. So 1 inch past that. Right here. I'll just square those off. Okay. Now, from there, from the edge, I am going to want to go in 0.204. So I'm just going to set that right off the bat. And I'm actually going to scribe this mark. And then 1 inch from there, a little tough to see. Oh, I did this backwards. Okay, from that side, because this is my trigger end, small end, I'm going to want 160 mil. So from this side is where I want the 204 thou, not mil, thou. 204 thou down to 160. And we'll throw that in there. And then what I'm going to do now, Again, the tutorial that I've watched, he recommends about 8 inches for your reed, which of course, far longer than the actual harp itself. But it gives you something to hold on to while you're working. And unlike my original one, I decided that I want to put a nice long tail on it. So it's kind of more like a Morchang. So that's my plan. So time to map out the tapered reed. Again, I really hope this is successful, because without a shear, trying to make this straight edged and sharp and everything could prove to be difficult. So damn light. Okay, so looks like I've got myself a pretty straight line scribed into there now, and I'm gonna see what I can do to cut it out. Okay, so this shot makes my garage look like a mess, which it is. Anyway, I tried to use tin snips, and my tin whacker friends probably could have seen this coming a mile away. Whatever I cut off was just curling. So luckily I didn't try that on what I've laid out for my my reed. I almost decided to redo it a little bit, because I think I should have made this a little bit longer so the trigger is a bit thinner, but I know I'm going to grind some of it down, so I don't think I'm too worried about it. But what I've decided to do is use a small cutoff tool on my Dremel. I'm going to use the main part of it rather than the little remote pen thing, because I think I'll have a more steady hand with this, trying to basically cut along the edge as straight as possible. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, well, that was a bit tedious and tough, and I went through a number of little cutting discs, but I managed to get it. It's somewhat flat. I don't know, I think it's got pretty decent stiffness for what we're going to do, and this is kind of the taper that we're looking for. So it's going to sit in there roughly like so. And then this will bend up as the trigger, and I'll cut off probably right about there, and that'll be the new reed. But this has a lot of work to go. It needs to be smoothened and edged and all kinds of stuff straightened out, and so I don't know. It's gonna be tough, but we'll see. Okay, this might be a bad idea, but to try and straighten out that rough edge, I'm going to see if I can use my Dremel sander or grinder bit like this. We'll see. So the grinder was a little bit hard with the roughness. Try to straighten it all out. Of course, was going too fast and then catching, and I was getting more divots and stuff. So for more control, I decided I needed to put my file in a vise like this, and I'm just running it across, getting all the high spots out to hopefully get as smooth and flat and straight of a taper as I possibly can on this. And it seems to be working, I think. I just have to be very careful not to overly bend the reed. Oops. All right, I cleaned up the taper pretty good. Now I'm going to put a bit of a knife edge on the reed, which is a lot like my Vargan. I'm not really sure what it does. I'm sure, I don't know, it sharpens the sound or adds overtones or something. Who knows? But I'm going to do that. It's also what I saw in the how-to video that I was following. He had done just kind of one edge of it, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. But I found this attachment for my Dremel that's going to make it a little easier to just draw across. So I'm going to see how this is with the grinder, cleaning this up. It kind of terrifies me a little bit, but because this was a lot of work to get this shape as it was, so we'll see. So it kind of worked out. I'm not sure if the green one was meant for stainless or this one's meant for stainless, or I don't know. I could have looked into it a bit better. Obviously, I don't use this very often, but I did manage to get the start of something on the edges, if you can kind of see it. It's not exactly sharp. I don't think it needs to be razor sharp. In fact, Jamie from the Harpery even said it's not necessary. You can cut your lip or your tongue that way. My Vargan is razor sharp, and I can attest that you can cut your lip that way, so probably don't need it, but it's starting to look pretty decent. The red mark that you see there is my 3mm for my trigger length, so that needs to come to the end of the frame. So I'm going to start filing back here, or actually I'm going to start working this a bit more too, just to smooth it out, and that should buy us a little bit more distance, and then I'll file the reed channel out a little bit more till I get the insertion that I need, and make sure it's still straight, and then I'll attempt to crimp. So I've decided I'm going to just go back to doing this by hand on my file and the vise, and just be patient with it. It's more controlled this way, and yeah, I don't want to screw it up because it's my first one, and it did take a lot of effort to get here. So slow and steady wins the race. So I'm just doing some late night work on the reed, doing some final honing here on my sharpening stone. I think I've done enough to get a good edge on it. It's not sharp, but I think it's clean and smooth. There's a couple of imperfections. Looks like the steel was, I don't know, dinged up a little bit at some point. I don't think it's going to have too much of effect. It might have some weird overtones or something, but it might actually make it sound really cool and totally unique. So I don't know, but at this point, just kind of, like I said, just smoothing, doing some final honing, and it's going to be time to get it to fit. It's actually already looking half decent. So I need to come out a bit more. So for when I bend my trigger, so I'm going to heat it with a torch and bend it. So I need it to stick out a bit more, which means I'm going to go back to filing in here until this comes out to where I need it to. And then we'll put it together, hopefully. Okay, I've pretty much got my reed right where I want it. If you can see the red mark there. Oh, no, it's on the other side. Oh, no, yeah, it's on both sides. Anyway, the red mark there is just about at the end. And so that means I want to pound this in a little bit, but first, before I do that, because I'm going to basically set it finally, I believe, because I think I did a good job filing it. I'm going to do what's called the a relief cut, where we use with this cutoff saw, I just take a little bit of a bite out of it. And so when I go to make the crimp itself, it's going to be a little easier to bend that metal over. You're not dealing with the huge mass of it. You've got just a kind of a little offshoot to deal with. You'll see in a second. Safety first. So I still can't seem to get it to focus. When I crimp it, it'll just be those little chunks of metal to bend over rather than something that's stuck to the entire frame. Okay, so another little trick I saw was to use a board like this and a vise. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to clamp this down for now, and I'm going to take my reed, slide it in, just trying to see if there's one way or another that's going to work better. In fact, I'm going to have to take this off for a sec. Yeah, I think this way is the right way right here. So, clamp it down. Hammer and whoop, want to make sure we're nice and flat, good and flat. Just tap it in a bit. Looks like we're still good and flat there. Okay, yeah, there's quite a bit of deflection going on as soon as I tapped it in. So I think I need to file a bit of that out more before I even attempt the crimp, because I would prefer to see if I can get that to sit flatter rather than try to bend the arms and stuff way too out of whack. I think that's too much. I think I can file. I think I buff that out. Okay, I think I've started filing a bit too much. I think I'm at a good flatness at least, but you can see I'm starting to go a little bit too far on my length from my trigger. So I started to get to the point, hopefully I'm gonna have nice gaps here, but I've gotten to the point where I'm touching now on the frame, so I've got to file some of this down, not too much back here, because if I do, I'm gonna just keep sliding forward. So I'm gonna file off a little bit here in the playing area, and hopefully, do the crimp.